Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Hogwarts Legacy. This is the first full-fledged game that I have played on my PlayStation 5, and although I got many games for Christmas for the system, this is the one that intrigued me the most, being a big Harry Potter fan, and I was interested to see what a AAA game would look like in that context. Now, I have played a couple of the Harry Potter games that are based on the movies themselves, mostly the first couple, 1, 2, and 3, I think are the ones I've played through. This one is not based on the movies, but rather it takes place 100 years before the events of the Sorcerer's Stone. And you can certainly tell that the people who developed this game really understand the wizarding world and the characters and the feel and the essence of what it means to be a Harry Potter game. In this game, you start as a 5th year student and you get to create your own character. It doesn't really go into depth as to why you're starting as a 5th year. I think if I was to speculate, there might be some side quests or some side dialogue that I missed, but maybe you just acquired your powers as a 5th year and you were just a late bloomer. It doesn't dive into that. Characters do mention that it is very rare for a student in your position to occur, whereas most students have their magical abilities before they reach the age of the 1st year. I think they have you starting as a 5th year, so then you get the whole introduction to Hogwarts and introductory spells, but you also are given more flexibility as far as like being an older student would go. And tonally, this game kind of acts as if a 5th year student is going through the actions, because first years are still pretty innocent and young. If you're thinking about the Harry Potter movies and books, tonally it doesn't get dark until around the end of the 4th book and the 5th book onwards, and this game can certainly get pretty dark. It's not for the young people who are just entering the Harry Potter world. People do die in this game. There's mention of torture. There's a lot of fighting and violence. I mean, the game isn't Grand Theft Auto or anything, but it is rated teen for a reason. It has pretty much all the things that you would want out of a whole Hogwarts experience. First of all, you get the sorting hat on your head, you answer a few brief questions, and they kind of make it seem like you are getting placed into a house, but really you have the choice. And just like Harry Potter in the first book, you kind of get a choice where the sorting hat will eventually just ask you, like, look, what house do you want to be in? And so, although I don't think inherently I am a Ravenclaw, I do want to be in Ravenclaw, and so I ended up being a student in the Ravenclaw house. You also get to create your own wand. Rather than as much as Ollivander would have you believe, you actually got to choose your wand, but they make this big show that the wand is choosing you, but really after that you kind of get to choose what your wand looks like design-wise, and you can swap out the handle for this wand too, so you can also customize your wand as you go along. Not that it really matters in all honesty, because it's not like you really ever actually see your wand up close unless you navigate into the menus to take a look at it. But as far as the gameplay goes, I don't think it matters like what kind of core your wand has, or how long your wand is, or what kind of wood it's made out of. You also get to experience all these different classes that you read about and see in the movies. You get to take a potions class and learn how to make different potions, and herbology and learn how to plant these different plants like mandrakes and things like that. You get to learn defense against the dark arts spells, and you go to all these classes and they introduce all of these different spells exactly how you would want in a game like this. And it was always exciting to learn a new spell, but by the end of the game, the amount of spells does get a little over cumbersome, in that there are so many spells that in the heat of the battle, you don't really have time to kind of figure out what kind of spell you exactly want to use. So how they navigate with the combat system is you have your basic little pea shooter that you just launch little bolts as you tap the shoulder button. That one's always equipped, so when you're waiting for your powerful spells to go off of cooldown, you're just shooting your little pea shooter. In addition to this, you always have Protego equipped to the triangle button, and Protego basically blocks any oncoming attacks where there's a yellow indicator over you. So if you use a proper Protego under a yellow base attack, then you can counter attack with them with a Stupefy, I believe. You are also always equipped with Revelio, which basically just highlights any items of interest around you, and I was just navigating like dungeons and through Hogwarts, just always casting Revelio, always looking for those highlighted objects, because otherwise you can't really tell like which objects you can collect, and there are a ton of items and little knickknacks and gear to be collected, especially when you are just wandering the halls of Hogwarts. But in addition to the spells that you always have, you can equip up to 4 spells at a time in a certain slot. So basically you want your 4 favorite spells to be in the first slot, but as you level up, you can unlock additional slots, which are basically like 4 additional spells that you can map to the D-pad. So in total, you're equipping 16 different spells, and that's still not all of them, but that's going to be most of them. You do have some spells that are more for the care of magical creatures, and we'll go into that in a little bit, but in the heat of the battle, especially by the end of the game, I am just chucking whatever spell I possibly can at the enemy. Any spell that's not on a cooldown at the moment, I'm throwing at them. I'm not even really worrying about my little pea shooter attack by the end of the game. I am not even really aiming, to be honest, because it has a pretty decent aiming system to it as well. I'm just looking at my character, and if there's a yellow icon above my head, then I'm using Protego and counterattacking. Otherwise, I'm just chucking any spell that I possibly can. Now, if you do get a red icon over your character, that means that this attack cannot be blocked by Protego, and you have to do a dodge roll in order to move away from it. So I'm just looking at my guy, honestly, the whole time, just looking for those yellow or red marks. Now, you will encounter enemies that have their own little protective bubble around them, and they will be colored. And so you'll see an enemy with like a purple bubble around them, and that means only spells with a purple background can destroy that shield. So these spells would be mostly like movement-based spells like Accio to draw the enemies towards yourself. So there is some thought needed in looking at an enemy and seeing what color of bubble they have around them if they are being protected, so then you can know exactly what kind of spell you're supposed to use. But you really don't have too much time to think about this, especially when you're going against like 20 different enemies. I would focus firstly on countering and dodging attacks, and then working on your offensive abilities. Now, the interesting thing about this main protagonist in this game is this 5th year student can see and use a type of ancient magic, and the story delves into this ancient magic. It's kind of like the main plot point of this game, and there's basically just like a little meter that will fill up when you are in combat, and when this meter fills up, then you can do basically like an instant kill with a super spell, super little animation thing. So I mentioned this game takes place 100 years before the events of the Harry Potter books, and it takes place during the Goblin Rebellions. And so the main antagonist in this game is a goblin named Ranrock. And I like that we get to dive in a little bit into this lore, because it's something that is brought up in the books, especially by Professor Binns, and so it was kind of cool being able to experience those references to the Goblin Wars firsthand. And the Goblin Wars dives into kind of stereotyping, typically. Basically, like, the goblins aren't allowed to really use magic, and they're not allowed to use wands or anything like that, and so the goblins are kind of like rising up in opposition towards this ruling. It kind of touches a lot on stereotypes where goblins don't trust humans, humans don't trust goblins, but then we encounter like nice goblins, and we talk about like relations that are being built between them. It's not too heavy-handed, but it does dive into this topic a couple of times. Now, it can be a little overwhelming playing this game, especially because it's such like an open world game. Now, it's not the largest open world game I've ever seen, but your map is certainly covered in icons, and when you are first plopped into Hogwarts, there's just stuff all over. You could potentially spend 10, 20 hours just wandering the halls of Hogwarts and collecting all of these different keys to get house tokens, and these little pages at points of unique interest, and there's tons of little things to collect and explore, but a lot of this stuff is actually gated off from you, especially at the beginning of the game, and so you need to progress in the main story in order to take all of these classes to to learn all of these different spells and abilities in order to access more of these things that are hidden throughout Hogwarts. And whenever you do take a class and learn a new spell, you kind of have to like trace this little pattern, and it's almost like a rhythm-based game where you try to like click the right button as you are tracing the pattern. It was never challenging for me, but it was kind of cool that they tried to implement some kind of like, this is the wand movement you want to use when you are casting the spell. Now, you never have to trace the thing again if you ever want to cast the spell again, but it's just kind of like how you learn the spell. And so I actually recommend, before just running around Hogwarts at the beginning of the game and trying to do everything you can, play through the main story, even like halfway into the main story, till you have a decent amount of these spells, especially like Alohomora. You don't learn that until fairly on into the main game, and that basically unlocks these these padlocks, and so you'll be able to access a lot more of Hogwarts after you learn that. Now there are different tiers of this Alohomora as well, so you need to collect and find these certain little items to turn into this guy, and he'll teach you like different levels of Alohomora. So even by the end of the game, I was still blocked off certain sections and rooms in Hogwarts. But tonally, it really feels good. As cliche as it sounds, it really feels like you're a student at Hogwarts and you're just exploring all of these different rooms and caverns, and there's so many like possibilities in this giant castle of Hogwarts, and you always read about it or saw it in the movies, and now it was really fun actually playing it yourself, especially when you encounter these landmarks and things that you recognize from the books and movies. Like, I saw the portrait of Sir Cadogan. I saw like the one-eyed witch. That's a secret passageway into Hogsmeade. And so it was fun, especially as a Harry Potter fan, to see those references and actually get to experience them firsthand in a way. This open world isn't just contained in Hogwarts either. There's a pretty big map outside of Hogwarts, and you are given pretty much free range around this world, and you are given a broom fairly early in the game as well. So you're flying around this place and just exploring all of these different landmarks and uncovering all these different icons. And just like inside Hogwarts, there's a ton of stuff for you to do in this open world as well. There are these like Merlin trials and these flying trials where you try to fly through these balloons, and there's also these beasts that are scattered around. And basically, if you've seen Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, you are given like this bag to suck up the beasts into the bag, and they say it's because there's like poachers around and they're trying to get these beasts, so you're saving them. And so that's kind of like how they justify you vacuuming up these beasts into your bag. And then in the room of requirements at Hogwarts, you're kind of given this little station that you can decorate and organize and make potions and plant herbs. And in this room of requirement that you can decorate, there are also these one-off rooms that you can release your beasts in, and you can like interact with them and play with them. And if they're fed and they're brushed, then you can collect certain materials from these beasts in order to create more potions as well. And usually whenever games have this kind of thing where you collect the animals or you breed the animals, I'm not really interested in it, but I actually had a lot of fun collecting these animals because I really like the designs of the creatures in the world of Harry Potter. And I don't know, something about like the room and the music is so tranquil, and I loved just visiting my beasts from time to time and feeding them and playing with them. And I enjoyed it more than I usually enjoy that kind of thing. And I actually also enjoyed decorating my little room in the room of requirement as well, because it actually had some functionality to it as well, with the like potion desks, and there's like a loom where you can upgrade your gear, and a ton of stuff to explore and like really make this area your own. And typically I'm not interested in that, but I kind of got into it this time around. Tonally as well, I like how the seasons change as you go through the school year, just like it does in the books and the movies. You go in and it's fall, and there's like jack-o'-lanterns around, and you go into the Great Hall, and there's the classic like floating candles, but then it goes into winter, and then suddenly you see all these like Christmas trees and wreaths decorated all over the place. And when you go into the Great Hall, it looks like it's snowing down onto the dining room tables. And then after the game is beat, then it goes into spring and you can finish off the rest of the school year. And so I do like how visually this changes as well, because I associate a year at Hogwarts with all of the seasons and the holidays, because they really play up like Halloween and Christmas in these books and movies. The music too is just like straight out of a Harry Potter movie. If I would believe you if you had said that John Williams had composed this music as well, because it fits in so well. It's like the exact Harry Potter music, but like not quite. It's like still different, but still works and it still fits. All of the spells sound just like they do in the movies. When you use Lumos, it makes that little whimpering noise just like it does in the movies. So it feels so much like the movies. It's one of the really fun things about this game. Now, I really do wish that this game was not an open world game, however. Maybe like just Hogwarts is the open world part, but the whole world beyond Hogwarts with all these icons and things, I just get so overwhelmed at this point. Just whenever I do play an open world game like this, there's so many menial tasks that you have to do, like so many of these menial tasks in order to see any improvement to your character, and it just ends up feeling like work to me. And so when I reached about the 20 hour mark of this game, that's when I decided I'm not worrying about any of this side stuff. I'm really not even worrying about the side quests. I'll do a couple side quests here or there, but I really just kind of wanted to play through the main game and kind of play this like a linear game. Now, this brought its own problems, where this game has a leveling up system where once you level up, you get more hit points and you get to choose a skill in the skill tree, which like upgrades your spells and things like that. But if I missed out on some of that for not doing the side quest, fine, whatever. The thing that really bugs me is your damage output is so minimalized if the enemy is a higher level than you. So if the enemy is like 1 or 2 levels higher than you, then you'll see their level in red, and it's almost like you're just chucking little pebbles at these enemies because you're just slightly under leveled than them. And so near the end of the game, I guess I should have just spent more time grinding up and doing those side quests to level up, but I felt like I wasn't doing any damage to these guys, and I was really good at countering and dodging these attacks, and so I was able to hold my own and eventually beat these bosses and these big old trolls. But it takes a long time because I wasn't the right level that they wanted me to be. Now, each quest does have a minimum level, like you have to at least be this level before you can do this quest, and I always met that level with a couple levels to spare. So like the very final quest that I had for the main quest, you had to be like minimum level 24 or something like that, and I was level 28, so I feel like I should be able to hold my own without just having my spells just barely nick these enemies. But the reason I just force myself to push through these main quests is I could feel my attention kind of waning with this game. Around that 15-20 hour mark, that's when I start getting a little bored, unless the game's just like really good. But once the novelty and the joy of being in this Hogwarts Harry Potter universe wore off, the open world underbelly really showed itself, and it's just like, look at all of these jobs you have to do and all these tasks, and that's when I just started not caring. So I knew that I had to finish the main game, otherwise I would eventually just drop this game off. And I didn't want my perception of this game to get too tarnished, because I really do enjoy this game. I think they did a ton of things right. It's just me personally, I'm not too crazy about the whole open world aspect these days. Another thing that you do need to be a proper level for is to equip certain gear. Now, this game does have a typical gear system that you'd see in other games. You can equip like a hat, a scarf, some glass, like some kind of face wear. Usually it's going to be glasses, your robe, your vest, and these different gears have different varying effects. The base thing that it can affect is your defense and your attack, but as you go along, you might might find rarer and rarer gear that has different enchantments, like, hey, this makes your Stupefy do more damage, or this makes your Expelliarmus do more damage. And so you can also like equip these enhancements to your gear as well, and you need to be certain levels in order to equip this gear. Now, I do like how visually this does change your character's appearance as well, where you end up just looking really silly or really cool, depending on like what kind of gear you have on your character. But it might be like a really serious moment and your character's just wearing these ridiculous giant glasses with big old pupils, and everyone's just acting normal, and like you're not wearing really silly glasses. And so it's just a little joy of mine that the gear changes with your character's appearance so drastically. I thought my main character's voice was good. Like the voice actor for my guy was good, but you can adjust like how deep or high pitched your character's voice is. And so I did the second to the deepest voice, and I don't know, something about my character's voice sounded really tinny, almost like echoey. Like it's like you could hear some kind of stereo sound going on, but like the two sound waves didn't align quite right, and so it sounded a little off. And I don't think I'm the only one who's noticed that. I think I've read that somewhere else online about the tinny kind of echoey voice. So I'm wondering if the female voice actor also had the same problem with this. By the end of the game, my PlayStation 5 told me that I took 23 hours to beat this game, just the main game. Now, I know there's like a ton of side stuff that I could potentially do, and that once I probably do beat the game 100%, then the year rounds off and I get the end of the year feast or whatever I imagine happens. But I'm good. I think I want to leave the game where it's at right now. I still had a great time with it. I'm going to give this game a 4 out of 5, but I feel like if I was to continue to get this game any longer, I might end up getting really frustrated and bored and just drop off the game, and my perspective of the game would drop from there. So I want to leave this game at a 4 out of 5. Now, if you enjoy this open world, do all these little tasks and things, I think this game will be right up your alley. And you know what? Even if you have never read the books or seen the movies for Harry Potter or Fantastic Beasts, I still think that you're going to get a kick out of this, because it's still, the world around it really sets itself apart from anything that you've experienced before. And the combat with the spells and casting all these different spells that have all these different effects, I think really sets this game apart from other games of its kind. Well, guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Hogwarts Legacy, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!